Hey there, Mr. Happens here. Today, I'm gonna finish off Mr. Smiley. So, let's go ahead and keep the intro short and go ahead and turn off the lights. Close your eyes and turn up the volume. This isn't my car. This is a police car. I'm in a police car. My head's pounding, my throat is killing me, and my hands are covered in blood. I should calm down. I should explain. Okay, I went home. And got my shotgun, extra shells, water bottles, and food. I took my credit card as well, just in case I needed to buy something on the way. I didn't bother locking the door when I left. I have a horrible feeling I won't be coming back. I drove, and I drove, and I drove. For 6 hours, my agoraphobia tormented me, reaching higher and higher intensities until I could bear it no longer. And just at that moment, as suddenly as it infected me, it was gone. In its place, bone-melting exhaustion flooded into me. I drank coffee, put on loud music, and pricked myself with a thumbtack I found next to the gas pedal. None of it helped. After 12 hours of driving straight, I blacked out. I woke up here. I'm 3 minutes from the town. I don't know how I know that. The crust that preacher gave me is sticky. And I don't know with what. I don't want to know. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't. Not possible. I just stole a car from a police officer in my sleep. Shit. Doesn't matter. Can't think about it. Deal with it later. Maybe I'll get PTSD with this. Mental health worker with mental health problems. Funny. Focus. Let's see what Mr. Smiley is up to. I drove up to the edge of where the town used to be, to find nothing but barren wasteland. Dust hung through the air, and the sun was wrong, red and swollen, shining weakly through the cloudless sky. This place, from horizon to horizon, had been prepared for whatever was coming. The buildings, fountains, trees, and bodies were all gone. In their place, 2 towers stood, huge structures that each held a white, polished bell. When I got closer, I realized the towers were made of a hodgepodge of wood, brick, stone, and mud. Each one was half the town, and I realized exactly what those bells were made of. I drove up towards them, keeping the car behind one of the towers, making sure that wherever Smiley was, he couldn't see me coming. As I prepared to step out of the car, I noticed a dust cloud approaching from all directions. It took me a second to notice the flashing red and blue lights within them, the black SUVs, and tinted windows. I realized I was in a stolen car, quite literally red-handed, holding a shotgun, with bills that paid themselves with money that I didn't have. If those were policemen, I'd be getting a few felony charges before I could call a lawyer. I shut and locked the doors, blasting the AC to stop the sweat that was running down my back. I watched them go by in little chunks of 2 or 3 cars each one driving a little slower than they should be. Luckily, they paid me no heed, and I giggled a little once I realized that I came here trying to kill what might as well be an X-Men, and I'm hiding from a few police officers. At least, I thought it was a few. As the cars kept coming, I realized it was much more. What Mr. Smiley had done to bring them here, I didn't know, but they skidded to a stop around the towers. Everyone got out, some bringing out the barriers from the back of the SUVs, some just standing with pistols, wary. I saw how they looked at each other strangely, each one with that edge in the eye that said, "Do you know why we're here?" The realization hit me all at once as I eased the car over. None of them knew the other was coming. As I stared at the figure standing between the towers, with ropes that led to each of the bells in his hands, I figured it out. These officers, these men and women, he had brought them. What he had told their departments, I didn't know, but it was something big. Something that would drag them across country. Maybe tales of terrorists? People love those. But one thing I do know is no group had the same story. These were Mr. Smiley's sacrifices. These were his lambs. I opened the car door, heat hitting my face like a punch, clutching my gun like a child. Nobody paid me any attention, probably thinking I was lost as they were. There was no threat here after all, just a man. Just Mr. Smiley. Standing there with those ropes in his hands, he was shirtless, the shirt he had worn at the hospital tied around his waist, showcasing a scarred and pockmarked chest. White lines all over one shoulder. His bare feet shifted in the dirt. His mask shone in the light, grinning at us. Quick as a snake, his hand twisted. He wrenched one of the ropes down. Bell in the tower creaked and rang, the sound pounding at our eardrums. Just as quickly as he wrenched the other, the two creating a cacophony that, I'm convinced, came straight from hell. The officers all stepped back a little, the circle they had made around his altar widening. Smiley dropped the ropes and started running. He was coming right for the formation, blindingly fast. The officers wondered aloud what he was doing, why he was here. I didn't waste such time. I bolted towards my car, my stolen car. I spared only glances from my shoulder, and I really wish I didn't even do that. Mr. Smiley swept up under the first man in his way, grabbing him by the throat and hoisting him into the air. The officer screamed at the massive man to put him down. "Put your hands behind your head. Come quietly." I knew Smiley better. He closed his hand, the officer's head vomiting viscera as it turned from his shoulder. Smiley turned and threw the body into a group of men, bending to pick up a barrier as he did so, using the thing like a battering ram to crash into a car, skidding it backwards. Dust kicked up all around as I vaulted over the hood of my own police car, taking cover behind the metal. The circle dissolved as men who were near the monster tried to get away, and men who were away from it flooded in to help, creating a gridlock of pushing mobs. Many a woman used her size to squeeze through, entering the swirling crowds of dust with pistols, handcuffs, tasers, and the occasional shotgun or assault rifle. The most you would hear was a single shot, maybe a scream. Then the cloud would move forward, bloody rags entangled with twisted bits of machinery left behind as Mr. Smiley tore through his lambs. A group slammed down barriers, the strangers having all gone through the same training, operating as if they had fought together all their lives. They watched the cloud with shotguns and assault rifles, and all hope of taking this creature alive gone, only a desire to see it die remaining. The panicked mobs quickly latched onto this idea, creating row after row of copycat barriers, some using cars, some only armed with tasers or pistols. The cloud that encompassed my tormentor started to fade, his movements no longer able to sustain it as he, presumably, stood still, waiting. As his form became concrete, the blood-stained mass grinning horribly at him, they opened fire. Mr. Smiley raised the torn remnants of some sheet metal, bullets hitting its pockmarked form as he charged his formation, crashing into it like a wave. Officers scattered like bowling pins, the barriers carving furrows in the dirt as they were battered aside, dust flying into the air. Their guns proved useless, the maelstrom of destruction keeping only the shotguns effective. And with his shield of metal, Mr. Smiley could not be touched. The crunch of bones sent limbs flying from the cloud, the line breaking again, survival instinct taken over as men and women flung down their weapons and ran. Others snapped, spraying bullets in a mad frenzy into the dust. The screams of their fellows only roared. A great twisted pile of metal that may have once been a car emerged from the cloud, flying over the heads of those still fighting, crushing one of the runners. Two others started, only to see the car still tumbling, turning each into a bloodstain on the ground. Mr. Smiley charged from the dust, not bothering to maintain it around him, the shredded remains of his shield dangling from his left hand. Bullets crashed into the ground around him, ones that, by all rights, should have met their mark, small, twitching movements of the massive man's form keeping him unscathed. Eventually, even he could not avoid the number of them as he advanced on the paltry few left alive, and he had no doubt sustained injuries in those clouds of death. Bullets thudded into his body, making new, unbleeding holes that joined others that I didn't notice in the dust. He tore through the one that had wounded him, leaving behind two severed halves that stared at the swollen, red sun. Less than 30 were left, out of so many that came. They begged, they fought, they screamed, and each and every one died. When it was done, when the last had her head crushed under a car door, Mr. Smiley stood still, panting. His chest heaved with the effort of his killings, and as he made his way back towards the bells, I saw something I never thought I would see. Mr. Smiley was limping. His right hand dripped a small, steady stream of black blood. In that moment, I made up my mind. I couldn't be smarter than him, couldn't be faster, couldn't be stronger. He was my better in every way, but I could be dumber. I pushed myself away from the car, my fear choking me even as I pushed it down. I was tired of this. I was tired of being this thing's pet, its messenger. So I walked towards it. He was wounded, exhausted. His senses were scrambled. Otherwise, he would have heard me by now. So I decided to attract his attention. "Smiley!" I roared, stomping towards him. He turned, and for once, I saw surprise in his eyes. As I continued to walk, I saw his head tilt, his eyes dart. I knew what he thought. He thought he had missed something, that I had set up a trap. And if you know there is a trap, why you never take the bait. But if the bait itself is a trap, I may not have liked guns, but my dad did. Loved the things. From the time I was about 10, he would take me out and make sure I understood how powerful these things can be. Made sure I knew how to fire one, how to load one. Make sure if I ever had one in my hands, I would know how to shoot before the other guy did. I hated it at the time, but thanks, Dad. I lowered the gun, fired. He staggered backward, his wounds overtaking him as blood. His blood leaked from the bullet holes. I popped the shotgun. He put a hand to his chest, feet skidding from the force of the shot. I had loaded buckshot in this thing. After all his injuries, he would respect it. I lowered the muzzle. The blast blew his leg out from under him, and he fell, catching himself as he coughed blood that stained his mask black. I stood over him, seething hatred for everything this thing has done to me. He had taken my life, my job, scarred me, used me, tormented me. Over 1,000 deaths were on his hands, 2 sacrifices of 616 lives. Lives that did not deserve such a brutal end. Lives that deserved an ending that was gentle and quiet. Lives wasted for the mad ramblings of a creature that did not belong in this world. He looked up, staring the barrel down. A barrel as forgiving as he ever was. He crumpled into a heap, the right side of his mask shattering into pieces, bullets burrowing into the weakened flesh, tearing through bone and brain. Blood flew in all directions, suspending white fragments of that terrible mask in pools of blackness. Blood spread from under him, dust seemingly repelled from the liquid, the stuff spreading in little rivulets over the torn ground. I let the gun dangle from my fingers and collapsed. I woke up to the feeling of being dragged. My gun was laying behind me, my head pounded like some little imp was taking a hammer to my brain. One hand trailed through the dirt, one was locked in something I couldn't see. I tried to move my legs, but I couldn't even feel them. I felt groggy, like you do after surgery. I managed to lever my aching neck around to see what was dragging me. It was Mr. Smiley. He was limping, bent, and his mask was webbed with cracks, but he was alive. I don't know why I expected different. This creature never seemed to die. Why would I be able to kill him? He threw me against one of the towers, cracking my skull against it. My vision swam, and I just barely caught him limping back to the other two ropes that drifted in the hot wind. The leg I had shot seemed dead, and when he turned slightly towards me, the right side of his face was a ruin of mashed flesh and shattered teeth. He made it to one of the ropes, clutching it at once, twice, before finally getting at it. He jerked it down, unable to use his hand like he had before. This time, he threw his whole weight into the motion, falling to his knees in the process. He placed a hand to the ground to catch himself, a hand that quickly became stained with blood that leaked constantly from his wounds. He pushed himself from the earth, grabbing the second rope as he fell, a familiar rang echoing out over the sea of corpses. He collapsed to the ground, seemingly having given everything he had to his cause. The air in front of him twisted and deformed, a horrible shrieking coming from the depths unknowable. The air itself, the molecules, split open, a yawning abyss opening up. I snapped my eyes closed as the thing stepped through. Perseus must have felt this. That's what I distracted myself with. I thought to myself that Perseus must have felt this when he crept up on Medusa. If you look at it, if you acknowledge it's there, you're dead. You're worse than dead. Much worse. I couldn't shut my ears off, though. I heard it pacing, heard the hissing of the dripping. I heard, as if through a film of plastic, the horrible, horrible screams that echo from the carvings. I kept my eyes squeezed tight, my blood froze in my veins, my legs numb, fingers clutching at the tower at my back. The hissing sound of the world rejecting this thing, and it crept closer and closer until the bubbling darkness that those souls twisted and writhed and felt as if it was pressing against me. And then there was clacking and clicking, a bone clattering against itself, and the horror was gone. As I opened my eyes, a great scream shattered the deathly peace, the sun swelling and burning a deep, dark red. Mr. Smiley knelt in a puddle of his own black blood, abandoned, forgotten. He slowly turned his head towards me. The shattered remnants of his mask and face stared at me, but there was something in his eyes I had never seen before.
"Mama?"
he asked. He fell forward, the mask slipping from his face. It hit the ground, floating in a pool of blood that was splattered over as if the rest of Smiley hit the dusty earth. I knew with a finality I didn't know was possible. This time, he was truly gone. As that realization hit me, my chest seized, a coughing fit striking me. After a few minutes, after which my lungs were sore and my eyes watering, something that looked like a cross between a sea urchin and an octopus was hurled from my mouth. I scrambled back with disgust, the thing twisting slightly, dying just as its master. I dragged myself to him, picking the shattered mask from the blood. Why I took it, I don't know. I still don't. But I took it, tucked it under my arm, and dragged myself towards the car. I had to hotwire the damn thing. Couldn't use my legs for the pedals. I'm home now. The bills still pay themselves. I collect disability. I can do whatever I want, within reason. I went to a doctor a few days after I got home, after my legs still refused to work or even be felt. Turns out, Smiley snapped my spine. Nothing below my waist will ever work again. I have a wheelchair now. I won't tell anyone what happened. They won't believe me. Not without proof. And I have none. There is no record of over 600 police and law enforcement going missing on the same day. There is no record of an Ohio town that was wiped out from the map. There is no record of Jeffrey Barnes, the psychiatric worker. Mr. Smiley, even in death, outsmarted me. Though I wonder if he knew what he was doing. The only proof that any of this truly happened is a half-broken bone mask that sits above my mantle, grinning down at me with a blood-stained smile, and the reports of unregistered flying objects over the UK, and a strange noise heard over the Pacific. Alright, so that's the end of Smiley. Definitely an interesting book. I'm probably going to be combining all the videos into one, so, you can listen to all of it at once, too. And I've said this before on other videos, sorry for the inconsistency in posting. It's been kind of chaotic in the whole personal life, and it's prevented time to record. And if you can't hear from the background, yeah, it gets kind of noisy here in the summer because of needing air conditioning and fans and all that other good jazz, to survive. Anyways, so if you hear clicking and stuff throughout for the videos for a little bit, that's why. And sorry for that low quality there too. But thanks for sticking around. Thanks for hitting like and sharing. And if you haven't, please do that too, because that actually helps out the video and the channel and everything, actually. Well, thanks.